So, how is the Leaving Certificate actually marked? Well, there's 6 distinct sections. They are the field investigation, short questions. Then we have the 4 sets of long questions, the physical geography, regional geography, electives, and then what's known as the option question, which is higher level only. I will mostly be talking about the higher level marking scheme. The ordinary level one differs quite a bit. So if you are doing ordinary level geography, a lot of this stuff won't really apply to you. So we're starting with the field investigation. Is a task carried out in 6th year. Schools receive some briefs and they must select one. So it's usually a set of 6. In most schools, they take you out for the day to undergo the fieldwork. They tend to only do this if it's, say, physical geography. So, for instance, in this case, the formation of a river, whether that be waterfalls or sort of large open bits near the mouth. However, some other stuff like population distribution of a nearby town is also quite popular because it sort of a lot of the research in it is the same. It's worth 20% of the grade, and if the exam day isn't going to go or hasn't gone very well for you, because geography tends to be one of the first ones to be examined, it can act as a good cushion for you. Now, the next section is the short questions. So similar to other short question sections in other Leaving Certificate subjects, it's literally just brief answers to questions. However, these short questions tend to be very nice, as it's either filling in blanks, matching pictures, ticking boxes, or writing a simple definition. Although they can sort of merge, so it might be matching pictures and then defining one of them. So it might ask, we'll obviously get to what it is, but it might ask for an example of chemical weathering that you might find in a karst region, which for those who already have done geography, that's carbonation. It's worth 80% of them, or 80 marks, which is 16% of the grade. Each question is worth 8 marks, and there's a choice of 12. So you answer 10, or they pick your best 10. I always recommend answering all 12, just in case some of the questions are really terrible. Speaking of quite terrible, ordnance survey maps, sort of map and photograph work, tend to make up a lot of the questions, whether it be map work, cross sections of a map, or stuff to do with the aerial photograph. They always tend to come up, so make sure you do practice a lot of them. Despite the fact that when we get to the ordnance survey map question, I can't actually use the ordnance survey maps because there's bits of copyright infringement that sort of make part of it. So we won't really get to much OS map stuff, although once I get to it, I will probably provide some sample answers for OS survey maps. Or just OS maps, because it's ordnance survey maps. I probably will provide some sample answers for it, but not necessarily when we're going through the theory end of it. You really should be blitzing through this section. Like, you shouldn't spend too much time on it. I recommend maximum probably about 2 minutes per question, which would rack you to about 20-25 minutes. Now, the next couple sections are nicknamed the long questions, but they're sort of the structured end of it. So the structured essay part. So each one of the following sections, so physical, regional, electives, and the option, are considered a long question, as I said. Physical geography talks about the physical features of the Earth, so volcanoes, earthquakes, rivers, etc. One thing that carries over to physical, regional, and the electives is the marking scheme. So there are 3 questions to choose from. They consist of one 20-mark question, which is part A, and 2 30-mark questions, B and C, which are your essays. Now, it's important that you answer an A, B, C from one question, so you can't do all the A parts, because you're essentially throwing all your marks away. And you can't do, say, 1A, 2B, and 3C. That's also not allowed. You have to do, for instance, a 1A, 1B, and 1C to attain all the marks. Each long question section is worth 80 marks. So again, about 16% of the grade. Now, regional geography talks about mostly this word of region. So just areas of the world with distinct characteristics. We talk about regions in Ireland, the EU, and abroad. The abroad region that we're doing, well, first off, in Ireland we're doing when we get to it, the EU we're doing southern Italy and France. And abroad, we're mostly focusing on Brazil, which actually comes up quite a bit in the course. If you do the economic electives, you'll see globalization and colonialism both talk about Brazil. As well, when we get to the option question, deforestation in Brazil is actually one we talk about as well. It is a very theory-heavy section, so it is a very love-hate relationship for students to regional geography. We won't actually have a lot of diagrams in regional geography. So with physical geography, we can include diagrams for marks, whereas in regional geography, you can't really get marks, except with sort of sketch maps, which we will get to in due course. It is one where you really need to practice essays for this one, and really need to know your information very well. The next section are your electives. You get a choice of two, either economic activities or the human environment. Now, you can only study, you have to study just one elective, so either economic or the human elective. I will discuss content in both, but you have to answer only on one. If you answer a question on both economic and human, they will have to pick the best one of the two. So just be very careful about that. Economic activities talks about wealth development and the distribution of goods and services. So in terms of this, we'll talk about the Human Development Index, sort of stuff like mass tourism, and this is where global trading patterns come in. Human environment talks about the distribution of population, so a lot of population pyramids, for instance, and overpopulation, migration, and why we settle in certain places. So we're going to be talking a lot about urbanization as well as counter-urbanization as a whole thing. A lot of really interesting stuff in human environment, although I do find economic activities is my personal favourite of the two. But obviously people have their own opinions. And finally, the option question. Despite the name, it's one of the more popular questions to approach. Is not necessarily left optional, because the questions, it only tends to cycle between two. So for instance, if you want to study mostly the biome section of geoecology, for example, which is one of the sections, the questions, it's literally either one of two questions that come up. So, as I said, geoecology is one of the types. You also have global interdependence, which is countries relying on each other. Culture and identity, which talks about culture and identity. And an atmosphere and ocean, which talks about, the atmosphere and the ocean. This section is very different to the other three, as it just consists of one long question. Now, I did actually forget to mention, pages don't really count because we mark it differently, but generally the physical geography questions take up 2.5 pages in the answer booklet. The rest of the ones should take up about the same, 2 or 3, with just all writing, so no diagrams. This should take up about five answer booklet pages worth, because of the amount of information we have to stick into one answer. And as I said, this section is higher level only. Now you can only answer on one option, so you can answer 2 questions from the same option, so 2 from geoecology, but you can't do, say, 1 from geoecology, 1 from culture and identity. That really won't get you the marks. As I said, it's marked differently, and it's higher level only. So hopefully that should have given a good rundown of the kinds of questions that can come up.